Hello and welcome. I'm Light, and this is my channel. And today we're going to talk about the Delphi murders. Specifically, we're going to talk more about Richard Allen, who was convicted in the killing of Abigail Williams, who went by Abby, and Liberty German, who went by Libby. They were killed in 2017. Richard Allen was found guilty in November of 2024. Now, I want to handle this video in the most respectful way possible. These are families struggling with the loss of their children. Currently, it's not historical. It's currently with them every day. So I'm going to try very hard not to put too much of a spin on it, of an opinion. I do have a possible opinion. I know that a lot of people don't believe that they arrested the right man, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But mainly, we're going to concentrate on the fact that the defense attorneys strongly believe that this murder was occult activity. They believe that the Odin occult killed these girls, and they left their marks, showing that it was them. We're going to be talking about that. Before we get started, if you could please give this video a thumbs up, comment, like, share, all of those things that you've been told for years. They do help our channels. Here we go. The murders occurred on February 13th, 2017, when Abby and Libby went for a hike in Delphi, Indiana, and disappeared. Their bodies were discovered the following day near the Monon High Bridge. The case gained national attention due to a photo and an audio recording of a man known as Bridge Guy, taken from Libby's phone shortly before their deaths. And I want to explain to those of you who do not know, something we learned in the documentary is that the way she took this video was she kept her hand down low, as if maybe she wasn't taking a video to not look obvious. She took the video of Abby, and Abby was talking, and there was a man walking across the bridge behind Abby, and that was the focus of Libby's video. She told Abby to come over by her. Abby and her were standing together. The phone was still on. They were kicking rocks and saying, well, the trail ends here. The only way else is to go down, and sort of trying to act nonchalant. You hear the man say hi. The girls say hi back to him. And then you hear him say, down the hill. And Libby is a little hero because it was her state of mind, her presence of understanding her gut feeling was telling her something, and she went with it, and she was going to go take this man down by taking evidence in case he did something to them. And that is an incredible feat. Richard Allen was a Delphi resident, and he worked at a local CVS. He was arrested in October of 2022. Here's the key evidence that was presented by the prosecution. A .40 caliber unspent round found near the girl's body, which was determined to have been cycled through Allen's Sig Sauer model P226 handgun. Now, the girls were not killed with a gun. They were not shot. The theory of the police is that he chambered the gun and he thought he was using that to scare the girls, that he would shoot them. So possibly that's how this unspent round was found on the ground. multiple confessions made by Alan to a psychologist, corrections officers, and his wife in jail. Now, if you've seen the video, the documentary, you're going to know this. And if you haven't, I'm going to tell you this. He was mentally ill. He took medication for mental illness. He was in solitary confinement for over a month. And the United Nations standards for cruel and unusual punishment, inhumane punishment, is to keep somebody in solitary confinement for longer than 11 days. He was losing his mind. The silence, the darkness, to just sit there with nothing but your thoughts is documented as driving people crazy. So the phone call he made to his wife, he said that he killed the girls, and she said, "No, you didn't. You're not. This isn't you talking." He said, "I think I did." And she said, "What made you think you did?" And he goes, I don't know. Maybe I did. I think maybe I did. So it wasn't so much that he was coming to a confession as that it seemed very much like his mental health was deteriorating quickly. And sometimes the police interview somebody who's completely innocent, and after 24, 36, 48 hours of them being awake straight, they confess to a crime they didn't commit. It happens. I'm not saying that this was the case, but I am saying that it happens. Alan admitted to being on the trails on the day of the murders. Well, not only did he admit to being on the trail, he called the police himself when he saw the news. And they were asking for anybody with any information or anybody who had been there to please call in. And he did. He called them and told them that he had been there. And they lost that information for years. So it wasn't until several years later, from 2017 until 2022, that they even looked at him as a suspect, because it was filed, who knows why, in the wrong place, not taken seriously, just taken as, okay, this is a person from the public who called to say that they were there but they didn't see anything. He said he did not see the girls. Alan's defense team argued that because of his time in solitary confinement, he was having a psychotic breakdown. And that is why he was telling people he thought maybe he had killed the girls. When the girls' bodies were found, they were found with tree branches on top of them. Not to bury them, not to cover them, not to hide them. They were shapes. They made shapes. They also said that there was something written on a tree in Libby's blood. The defense states that there were carvings as well, runes, suggesting that the cult of Odin was responsible in a ritualistic death of these two children, 13 and 14 years old. Abby was found close to the tree. She was unclothed. She had defense wounds on her hands. She was the one who had the worst of the knife wounds in her neck, her face. They suggest that it was because she witnessed Abby being stabbed in the neck and she was going to fight back. Abby was found clothed. Neither girl was thought to have been assaulted S-word way. Strange thing was that Abby was wearing Libby's clothes, so they had both been stripped down, but then Abby's clothes were put on Libby. Now, in the documentary, they do touch on the fact that there were branches over the girls' bodies. There was photos taken of them. However, the branches were left at the crime scene. They weren't collected. They weren't checked for fingerprints. They weren't apparently viewed as evidence. The blood on the tree was Libby's, but they didn't in the documentary talk about the rune that are carvings, old carvings that date back as long as there's been religions and cults and writing with pictures. But these specific ones suggest the Odin cult. The defense thinks that it's possible that the prosecution was hiding evidence from the judge. They wanted to get their man. It had been several years. People in the town were scared. It was a 2-stoplight town, very small. Everybody knew each other. I believe 3,000 people. And the pressure was on for them to do something. The defense says that the Carroll County Sheriff, Tony Liggett, swore under oath on August 8, 2023, that a Purdue University professor did not believe that the sticks on the bodies were Odinistic symbols. The defense also claimed that the prosecutor, Nick McKellen, allegedly told the defense that the prosecution was unable to identify any Purdue professor as of September 6, 2003. So Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett said that he had spoken to an expert, a professor, and that he had spoken to other experts, and they had come to the fact that it had nothing to do with an Odinistic style murder. But why didn't the prosecuting attorney know this? Prosecutor Nick McClelland. He was unaware that a potential expert had been interviewed, something that he might find useful in a trial, to say that no, this wasn't an occult activity. This was Richard Allen, period. He tried to find the man, and he couldn't. Allen's defense team claimed that investigators involved in the Delphi murder investigation had consulted a Purdue professor before February 2018 concerning what resembled, according to them, pagan symbols, possibly Odinistic in nature, that were left behind at the crime scene. Allen's attorneys claimed that State Trooper Jerry Holman said that the months after the girls' murders, that the professor had told him that it was not Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime. So the officials just dropped the pagan cult angle. But on September 18th of 2022, the defense submitted a filing outlining why they believe the girls were ritualistically sacrificed, and they leveled accusations against the lead detectives, saying that they were ignoring or intentionally suppressing that evidence for years. On that next day, September 19th, the defense claims that Holman was able to find the Purdue professor, Jeffrey Turco, and interview him. Holman said that he was working to set up the interview with Turco for several weeks, but the defense said that that would have happened at the exact same time that the prosecuting attorney was telling them that they couldn't even identify this man's name. Didn't have any information on him. They said that the professor stated that after seeing the patterns of the sticks, it was, quote, it was a given that someone was trying to replicate a Germanic runic script. That the professor consulted with a colleague from Harvard who agreed with the Purdue professor that he could certainly imagine that this was somebody's idea, that when you do human sacrifices, you carve runes. There are some poetic sources that would sort of support that idea that somebody might have come across ... The scenario seems entirely plausible to me. Now, something else the defense points out is that, like I said, Allen contacted the police department himself to say that he had been there because they were asking for witnesses. Well, there were witnesses, and they saw Allen on the trail. They saw him going in alone, and they saw him coming out alone. A couple years after the sketch of the man on the bridge was released, another sketch was released, and that was that of a man a good 20 years younger than Richard Allen. He had also been seen on the trail. The defense claims that the prosecution, who had told everybody that this second drawing was the one they should concentrate on, that they'd been looking at the wrong person for years, that this is the one they should concentrate on, was now suddenly back to arresting Richard Allen. Now, it does seem likely that it would be impossible in the something like hour and 16 minutes that Allen was out there that one person could do this by themselves. The girls were not found where they were murdered. They had to go down a steep ravine. Whatever took place, took place. Abby, apparently the first victim, both girls told or made to strip. Perhaps a gun was chambered to scare them into thinking they would be shot. And this is out in the middle of nowhere. Nowhere. I don't know that a gunshot even would have been of concern to anybody. I live in Texas. If we're out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and we hear a gun, that's just a day that ends in a Y. So, what about the second person? What about the younger man who was seen? Was he involved? Did he help? Why hasn't there ever been any charges brought against this man? Why isn't the search still continuing to find out who that other man was? Why was he written off? Well, we might never know. But what I do want to get into is what Odinism is and how it could be connected to these murders. Historically speaking, the term Odin cult typically refers to the worship of the Norse god Odin, particularly within the framework of ancient Norse paganism and its modern revivals. While Odin is a central figure in Norse mythology, the Odin cult can also refer to a specific group or their practices centered on his veneration. In this day and age, an Odin cult claims to worship the Viking god and believe that the Vikings are true white blood. You see what I'm getting here? It has become a white nationalist movement. So, would the claims be that Richard Allen is part of a white nationalist movement? And if so, would somebody leave signs, runes, paintings in blood that point to a white nationalist movement? In Norse mythology, Odin is a complex and multifaceted god. He's often depicted as many things: as the All-Father, the god of wisdom, the god of magic, the god of death, the god of poetry, and the god of war. He is also associated with the afterlife, particularly Valhalla, where he welcomes half of the warriors who die in battle. Odin is known for his pursuit of knowledge, sacrificing an eye to gain insight into the world. His worship was prominent among elites and warriors in Norse society. Odin's worship is well documented in historical and archaeological sources. Written accounts suggest that it's called a Germanian religion, the mention of Odin being equated with the Roman god of Mercury. Places and names, personal names, also provide evidence of Odin's significance in the past. There were sacrifices, including human sacrifices, as part of Odin's worship. The cult of Odin was particularly important for legitimizing rulership and social status. So could that have something with it? Could this be a way of maybe one would have to prove that they deserved to be in this group, thereby legitimizing their social status amongst the group? What would cause a person who has no connection to an Odin cult to lay out Odin cult signs, runes, what was written in blood, even the sticks? What's the significance of the sticks? There was only a few on each body. Like I said, it wasn't to hide it. It wasn't to disrupt the crime scene anyway, particularly since that appears to not have been the actual crime scene. Why did Abby have Libby's clothes on? Had they been involved in some sort of a ritual? Will we ever know who that other younger man was and if he was involved? Or how about the man who owns the property? The man who owned the property, when he was being interviewed, he acted like someone had just told him that a rabbit died on his acreage. So, things happen. Is there a white supremacist cult in a town of 3,000 people and it's hidden? Unless it's not hidden. And that's why there were signs left. Thank you for coming to my channel. Please leave comments. Please leave your ideas, your impressions, and I will comment back to you. Let's have a conversation. Good night.